We begin with breaking news, startling new revelations about when and what President Trump knew about the coronavirus. According to a new book by Bob Woodward, the president knew of the dangers of the coronavirus weeks before the first death in the U.S. Instead of warning the American people, the president decided to play the virus down. Woodward recorded two separate conversations he had with the president for the book, one from February, the other from March. Here's some of what the president told him, as obtained by CNN.
It goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. You know, the touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air. That's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. This is more deadly. This is 5 per... this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff. Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you...
Sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes,
because I don't want to create a panic.
CBSN political contributor and AP White House reporter Zeke Miller joins me now. Hi, Zeke. How is the White House responding to these recordings?
Very defensively. Publicly, we just heard from Kayleigh McEnany, the White House press secretary, a few minutes ago here at the White House, where she said, despite the quote that we all just heard in the president's own voice to Bob Woodward, she said that the president was not downplaying the outbreak and essentially saying the president has promoted vaccine production, therapeutics, ventilator production, all those things that the president did, but did not address sort of the timeline here. And if you sort of match up when these recordings took place versus what the president did and what the president said publicly, the clear and obvious disparity between what the president was saying privately and what he was doing and telling the American people publicly.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. When we look back after hearing these recordings that were taken in February and March, respectively, and we look back to what he was saying at the time publicly, what was the president? How was the president portraying the virus at that time?
3 days after the president said that in that clip that we just heard that the virus was airborne and aerosol and spread through the air between people, the president said it was going to be fine, is what he said publicly. He predicted it would just go away when the weather warmed up. He predicted that when the U.S. caseload was about 15 people, that it was just going to go down to zero very quickly. All of those things could be viewed as being somewhat aspirational and a president trying to express hope. But there is a distinction and an important difference between, sort of being hopeful or being calming and being misleading and trying to downplay a very real threat to the American public. And here the president is, in his own words, in his own voice, acknowledging that he tried to downplay this pandemic at a time when he had more information than the American public, more information than many people around the world, for that matter, and had the power to change things. And in a lot of cases did not. The most visible action that he took early on in the case of the pandemic was closing U.S. borders to many travelers from China. That was at the end of January. But then the timeline, there's a big gap in that timeline as the president got those warnings. But before things like personal protective equipment and ventilators, production of those things were ramped up, vaccine production, therapeutics, all that happened much later. That really began in March, once the pandemic became undeniable to the American public.
Yeah, these things just don't line up. It's true. Zeke, other revelations, interesting revelations coming out of this book. In a companion piece with the Washington Post, Woodward also says President Trump revealed the existence of a secret new nuclear weapons system. He says this was later confirmed by anonymous sources who were surprised the president disclosed it. How significant is this?
It is certainly something that, not just sort of the casual reader is interested in, certainly something that American adversaries would be interested in trying to learn more about as well. The reason why these classified systems are classified is to prevent that from happening. So it's, number one, interesting that the president chose to reveal that in this conversation with Bob Woodward. Number two is it raises the big question mark of what exactly is this that the U.S. government has developed, and it has come at a time where the president has pulled out of nuclear defense, nuclear treaties with Russia, sort of arguing that Russia was not complying with new weapons development. Does this call into question the balance of power on that front? And as the president's trying to renegotiate new nuclear deals with Russia, and then, as he has said publicly, he hopes to bring China into the fold on those nuclear deals as well, to try non-proliferation deals. So a lot of big question marks there, and sort of one of the bedrock principles of nuclear deterrence was somewhat baseline of transparency that there was that in the Cold War that U.S. knew that roughly what the Soviet Union had, where it was pointed. And the opposite was true for the Soviet Union of the United States, and that provided a sort of a calming influence and mutually assured destruction in the event something did break out. And here, saying that the U.S. has developed something new that American adversaries don't know about, actually, in some ways, could be somewhat destabilizing. So a lot of question marks about the president's revelation there.
Absolutely. Lots of revelations leading to a lot more questions. All right, Zeke Miller, thank you so much for joining us.